Bună dimineața, numele meu este Octavian Szalad și suntem la interviurile Teatrul Azi de la Festivalul Shakespeare de la Craiova 2026. Este ziua a 5-a, urmează alte 3 interviuri, iar prima invitată din această dimineață este Sadie Jemmett, compozitoare, regizoare de teatru, actriță. Hello, Sadie.
Hello.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
It's my absolute pleasure.
How is your time in Craiova?
How has it been?
Yes.
Oh, so far, so good.
Yes.
We arrived quite late because we flew into Bucharest.
Yeah.
And so then it was quite a long bus journey. So, yeah, but so far, breakfast at the hotel was very nice. And, of course, I always love coming to your beautiful theatre. I think it's such a gorgeous space. So it's nice to be here. Thank you.
I would like to start our conversation before we get to Shakespeare, even though before we started recording we talked a bit about Shakespeare, about your background in music. How did you start writing? Your music is very folkish, you know, in a way, particularly, but it has this particular characteristic of being, in a way, embodying this political power of music with your activism work. Can you talk a bit about your work?
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, I come from both a theatre and music background. So I studied theatre in Paris at the Jacques Lecoq School many years ago. And then I began really, I went into composing for theatre. I worked with Irina Brooke, who is here, I think, in the festival as well. I've worked with her for many years. She's a great friend of mine. So I moved into theatre as a composer. I had also, prior to that, been involved in a theatre company called the Rose Theatre in the UK as an actor and also as a director. And then I kind of moved into music as a singer-songwriter, and was very drawn to both English and American folk music, as you say, specifically. I mean, it's interesting, I see songwriting in the same way that I see theatre and directing as a study of the human condition. So we're telling stories. So, you know, when you put something on stage as a director or as a writer, you're telling stories, you're reflecting the human condition. Same thing with songwriting. And, you know, as I got older, it became more and more important to me to reflect what was happening in the world, you know. So I guess my music became more relevant to the times. Yeah.
Through the stories.
Politically, through the stories. So, for example, I had a friend who was directly part of the Me Too movement. She was sexually assaulted by a well-known film director, and so I found myself, was literally watching it. There was her story. I knew what she was going through, and then I was watching a documentary about Weinstein. And I could feel myself reaching for a pen, you know, and writing. So it was like a kind of compulsion, really, to reflect this and say, well, this is what's going on in the world. And as a songwriter, I need to document that. It was the same with George Floyd. The same thing, you know. There was so much at the time of George Floyd's death. There was so much misinformation and people not looking at the facts and what had happened. And I think as a songwriter, and particularly coming from a folk background, it is your job to say, okay, we're going to look at what happened and we're going to document it in song.
And how does the relationship between the rhythm and melody and words work in your compositions?
Oh my God, that's such a lovely question. So yeah, I often get asked that question, like what comes first, the words or the music? I think the rhythm comes first. So I will often write when I'm in movement. If if I sit down at a desk and say, now I'm going to write a song, it's like my brain just stops. So I'm often in movement, I'm walking. Trains are great because there's a rhythm on a train. So I'll get a rhythm, and then maybe I'll get the words, I'll get some words that will come in the rhythm. And the melody sort of will come after that, usually. It's rare that I'll get a melody before I get words. So I'll get, words and rhythm, I think, first. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yes. And what are the particular stories that you want to, that you are interested now?
Now, so I wrote a song. It's my last single, actually, that I wrote. It's called "The Frozen Ground," and it's an anti-war song. So it's a classical anti-war song. So that was very important to me, to document the wars, the increasing, that we're coming into a time of unrest again, and there are wars happening that are, people, so that's important for me. I wrote a song called "The Revolution is Internal," which is a very new song, and that's very much about how, because I was, if you look at kind of 60s activist folk songs, it's all very much get out there, protest. It's all very external, which of its time was very correct. But I feel like our job now, part of our sort of revolutionary job, is you have to fight it from the inside, because I think it's become very insidious with social media and phone addictions and the way that capitalism kind of seeps into social media, and we're all it's very and so I think it's an internal thing now. It's about checking yourself. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Then the next question is, what do you fight against? As you said, in the 60s, there were political groups. You knew exactly who you were fighting. I find that nowadays the opposing force is more diluted, is not so certain. Who are you revolutionizing against? Who are you fighting?
Yeah, I think you've put it perfectly. I think in late-stage capitalism, where everything ends up being sold or being bought, or it's all about the price tag, now. We have to be very aware and very conscious. Okay, where is this? How can I fight this? And you're right, it's not one thing. It's not one political group or government, or it's kind of everywhere. I think, moving on to theatre, I would say this is a great subject to look at theatre now, and how this price tag has been attached to it's become, and certainly in the UK, I think there's a growing gap in terms of just people not being able to afford to go to the theatre. So I think you can fight it. Certainly, what we're trying to do is to bring theatre to communities where they wouldn't necessarily have it, and try to keep the price tag down, try to keep the tickets accessible, try to bring workshops, education with us wherever we go, make that accessible to people. I would say look in the industry that you're in and see how can I counteract the capitalism, the money, does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, yeah.
And what are your sources of inspiration in the theater world? Because Britain has a tradition for this, let's say, highbrow theater, but also for a democratic theater. Like, if I remember right, the name, the theater of Joan Littlewood, or something.
Joan Littlewood, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so I suppose this was a long time ago, but so FUNDAștia Theatre, who I have worked with, you know, they were really one of the first companies to operate in a very socialist way. You know, they were a group of young people. They began in Cornwall. They traveled the world. They traveled around in a community. They shared the money that they made equally amongst themselves. There was no director. It was very, you know, so, and they did, you know, arguably they brought the theatre that was happening in Europe at that time, Jacques Lecoq, who was working with commedia dell'arte and puppetry and masks and, you know, and finding a kind of...
the poetic body.
Exactly, the moving body, and really the beginning of kind of what we termed as physical theatre began, I think, well, Lecoq was definitely one of the leading people. And they brought that to England and they kind of mixed it with Shakespeare and... I mean, touches of kind of old music hall, because obviously you know about the tradition of music hall in the UK, which was also very much for the people. It was somewhere where, you know, anyone of any station in life could go to the music hall and be entertained and stuff. So so that's, you know, obviously FUNDAștia, Complicité, and Knee-High Theatre, who followed off the back of FUNDAștia, you know, very inspired by FUNDAștia.
And at this edition of the festival, you came with the Common Ground Theatre, which is your company that evolved, as we were talking before going on air, from the 12th night production that you did, you presented Craiova at the last edition. Can you tell me about the story of this very young theatre company?
Yeah. So I was artistic director for FUNDAștia for 3.5 years. And the last production that I did with them was 12th Night, which we brought in 2024 to Craiova. We had a great time. And then my time at FUNDAștia ended. They've been struggling. There's been issues with funding as well. There's been a lot of issues in France with funding for theatre. And so it was really agreed that with FUNDAștia that I would be able to take this production with FUNDAștia as a co-producer and create my own company, which I did with Lydia Keating, who is my partner, who is not here. She's actually driving the van with all the props and set at the moment, so she's on the road. And she was one of the actors in 12th Night. So, and we founded Common Ground Theatre together. So our first production, which we began in September, we began workshopping it in September, is Hamlet, which we are now coming, I'm happy to say, been invited back to Craiova. Yeah,
and which you are presenting today at the Shakespeare Village.
Yes, at 5
o'clock. And tomorrow at 11.
At 11, yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
But going a bit back to the 12th Night, how did you choose this particular production, the text? Why, as an artistic director, Dan chose to tell this story again?
Yeah, so FUNDAștia had done a lot of Shakespeare plays. Twelfth Night was one of the few plays that they hadn't done, so that was one reason, very practically. It's a great ensemble piece. Arguably, there are no, there's no, it's not like Hamlet
it's
where
not
there's
one main character.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. I mean, look, I think Twelfth Night is a kind of perfect play because it has everything in it. It has comedy, it has love, there's a dark, sinister side to it with what happens to Malvolio, which I always think is, terrible. I always feel sorry for Malvolio. So yeah, it kind of has everything in it. I love this play. I fell in love with this play through a film version, the Trevor Nunn film version, which I would urge, if you haven't seen it, you have to see it. It's beautiful. So it just, and also, of course, musically, because I suppose my work as a director, I always joke that, I only do directing as a vehicle for my music. It's not true, but I compose and direct. So, most of the productions I do, I also compose and perform live the music with. So, of course, Twelfth Night being the musical that Shakespeare wrote, it was.
And how did you work on composing the music for Twelfth Night?
For Twelfth Night?
Because the words are there, we know, especially the epilogue, Festes, which is a very popular song, and we also have the notes since the Elizabethan period.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, it's interesting, composing for theatre, particularly if you're directing as well, is very different because you have the visual. So, as a director, I have a vision, right? Of visually, I can see a scene in my head and how I want to portray that scene. So you already have a great starting point, to compose into, I suppose. And I knew that I wanted to give these songs a twist of my own style, which is, I suppose, a kind of slightly Americana, English folk kind of style. So, I just really kind of went from there. We got a review in the Observer where they called it a folk Elizabethan Dylan. I said, I'll take that. Folk Elizabethan Dylan. So there's a kind of I suppose I tried to give it both a sort of Elizabethan and contemporary folk edge.
A particular theme in the 12th Night is this theme of identity. Like Viola, who is dressing like a man, and this big provo, this mistaken identity that evolves during this performance. How this theme worked for you, and what was your perspective on this theme in your production?
So I suppose at the risk of sort of sounding like a purist, which I'm not at all. I did have quite a kind of heteronormative casting. So I used a woman to play Viola. Also because I think for me, it was interesting. I had this conversation in 2024 when we went to Verona, and I did a Q&A, and I had a young woman asking me about, why I'd chosen to use a woman, in Shakespeare's time, women couldn't act, and I think Viola is a wonderful role for a woman, So in that sense, I felt quite kind of old school feminist about it, So we kind of kept that. I mean, my take on it really is, and I think in theatre, people should be able to do whatever they want to do. You know, I think it's great if you want to, however you want to cast Shakespeare. But my take on it was that a long time ago, Shakespeare had already taken this issue of gender and played with it. And I felt that I just didn't want to put anything on top of that. I just wanted to work with what he'd done. I didn't feel that I needed to add anything. But that's not to say that I don't enjoy it when people do, you know. And maybe if I directed it again, I would do it. I mean, the one idea I did have, which I didn't do, was to have to have one person split as Sebastian and Viola, so to use two costumes. And that's an idea I'd quite like to explore another time. But yeah.
You could explore it in Midsummer Night's Dream with the couples.
Well, yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think that's going to be our next production, actually.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
What's your? How do you work with the text? What is its primary? Your director vision or the text of Shakespeare? And how do you manage this dialogue between your vision and the text?
Look, I mean, I don't come from an academic background at all, so I suppose I approach it. I'm not. For me, it's not a question of trying to do anything other than what's there. You know, I'm not trying to find new ways. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm not trying to find new ways to do. There's enough people in the world doing that. So to me, and I think, you know, we were talking about this before. I think, arguably, and again, you know, I think I think people should be free to do whatever they want to do with Shakespeare. But for me, I think there's a danger of alienating people. I think often, particularly in the UK, Shakespeare is approached from a very academic way. It's often used as a kind of sparring war between directors who can put the most obscure slant on it, who can have the most original idea, etc., etc., etc. And I think the danger with that, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I think it was important that happened in the history of theatre, that it was important that Shakespeare was broken down and changed. But I think the danger is you can really alienate people, you know, particularly people who have not had access to academia or Shakespeare. And so for me personally, I try to work with what is the emotion, you know, how is the text going to hit people emotionally? How is it going to touch people? What is Shakespeare, going back to what we were saying about it being the study of the human condition, what is Shakespeare saying about the human condition that people, anyone in the audience, can relate to from a heart level, you know? So with Hamlet, for example, when we looked at the famous to be or not to be, and, you know, I think it's tough for actors approaching that text, and they get very in their heads and very like, oh God, you know. And I think there's always a danger to try to be cool, or to try to be original, or to try to be something. And so the direction that I gave to our actor, Nathan, who's playing Hamlet, was, I said, look, you know, all these big speeches, to be or not to be, I have of late, you know, they're all about human suffering. They're all about our pain. And so when you speak these words, you have to remember that there's people in the audience who have suffered, You know, if you're talking about suicide or if you're talking about not wanting to be here, you have to remember that there's people in the audience who may have felt like that, who may be feeling like that. And so you have to have an empathy and an openness, and you have to speak directly to that and hold it in your, in the language. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. And it's hard to do for an actor because you have to be very, very vulnerable and very open on stage.
How vulnerable can an actor be, and should an actor be on the stage in the work with the team, the artistic team, and for the audience? Should he has a barrier? What's their limits in this work?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a question for Nathan, I think. It's an interesting question. I mean, look, every actor will have their own method and their own entry point. Yeah. You know, so if you give that note as a director, then actors will approach it differently. I think you always have to be careful, particularly when you're dealing with issues of mental health and grief, which is what Hamlet is about, you know. And we certainly had to be very aware of that. Also with Ophelia, with the mad scenes, you know, the so-called mad scenes. I think that if you work with the idea that this suffering is a human experience, then I think you're actually less isolated in it, and that in itself can be a protective thing. So you see it as something that is part of being human, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then you're not isolated on stage. You're not kind of trying to access your own personal stuff, but you're kind of looking at it more from a sort of global human state.
What's your perspective on the madness of Hamlet? Is he mad? Is he not mad in your perspective, in your production?
Well, in order to answer that question, I think you have to look at, is anyone mad? Yeah. You know, I mean, what is it to be mad? And also, I don't think you're just mad and then you stay mad. I think there's a kind of, you can be at a 3, and then you can go up to an 8, and then you can come back to a 5, depending on, because arguably madness, I think, is pain. Yeah. It's human pain, you know, and it's the inability to process it. If you look at it from an academic point of view, and which, you know, Hamlet does say we can only go by the words that Shakespeare's given to us, and he does say quite often, I'm not mad, I'm acting mad. So arguably you could say that is the case, but then I think he's also, there's speeches where he tells us about the pain that he's in, and I think that pain is very real. I think, for example, Get Thee to a Nunnery, that whole speech with those dialogues with Ophelia, I think that's where you see his madness, and I don't think I don't think he's necessarily acting mad at that point. I guess I don't know. I haven't decided yet. What do you think?
Well, starting from where you started, I understand that more the madness is in the eyes that the one that watches,
yes.
not in the character.
Yes.
Because the character feels the pain.
Yes.
The pain is truth.
Yeah.
It's true for
Exactly.
him. So the limits of madness is in the capacity of the viewer to receive the truth of the pain.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Way.
I agree, absolutely. Beautifully put.
Thank you. Thank you. How did you choose Hamlet after 12th Night? Why did you go to Hamlet?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm crazy, because I'm mad. Yeah, and I mean, we had very little time. We rehearsed it in 3.5 weeks, which is for Hamlet, that's very, very little. And we also rehearsed it, so we have a space in England, in the woods. We have our own stage, so we actually did a lot of the rehearsing was outside. Yeah. I chose it because, well, I chose it because we had an actor in the company who I felt would play it very well, and I think that was important to me. But also because it is, for me, it is the play about grief. It is the play about what we all experience. There's something. It's Shakespeare's commentary on human suffering, I think, and I wanted to look at that. I wanted to get involved in that and work with it, and also because it's got some of the most incredible poetry ever written. I mean, it's just like a treat working with this play. It's just one line. It's so beautiful, the language.
Your performance is also in Craiova performed outside. Well, at 5 and at 11, it should be sunny.
Yes. Yeah.
And I want to ask you, how does this relationship with a moving public, a public that under the light doesn't create a particular intimacy with the performance, because you see everybody else, you are connected also by view with the ones in the audience hall, with the actors. How does this change, playing in open air during sunlight and playing in a hall under the darkness?
Yeah, it's very different. It's a great question. So we designed the play to be performed in both theatres, and really the ethos of the company is that we should be able to perform it anywhere. Yeah. We could just perform it over there, and I think you can't. The thing is, you can't rely on. You have to be in the imagination. You can't rely on somebody looking and being focused on you in order to get you into the imagination. You have to be, the actors have to put a lot of work or more work into really being in the imagination of the play and the space that they're in. We tend to use, wherever we go, the first thing we do is we look at the environment and we say, okay, how can we use this? Where can the ghost appear? Where's the best place for the ghost to appear for the audience? Yeah. To really give it drama. So that, and I think if you're adaptable and you're working with what you have, then it kind of, it permeates out the imagination kind of meets everyone, Yeah.
How did you develop the space? If I'm right from photos that I saw, the space is similar with the 12th Night in that curtain and with a circle, kind of circle.
Well, that is a very economic question. Yeah. Basically, we have no money. So this is the set that we used for Twelfth Night.
Yeah.
And we don't have anything else. So we had to adapt it and reuse it. And I mean, this is an interesting point for me because I think, and I'm going to start sounding like an old socialist now, but I think arguably, when you don't have any money, you don't have too much choice.
Yes.
And that can often be a very good thing in theatre. Productions that I've worked on, you know, the big productions that I've worked on where there's a lot of money, I think have often been tripped up by having too much choice. So we had to just use what we had. And hopefully, I mean, next year we'll be touring both shows back to back. Yeah. But I think we've managed to do it so that it's slightly different. So in Twelfth Night, we have this gate. Yeah. And the gate, I mean, I think the gate, somebody said to me a long time ago, the most important thing about directing is having a good exit and entrances. Those are if you have a good entrance point, then you're halfway there. And I think the gate is great, you know, I think it's particularly for Shakespeare, because it's quite generic. It can be indoors or outdoors.
And it goes back to the history of theatre. Now, the tragedy was in front of the palace gate. Exactly. So, but with Twelfth Night we had white curtains, now we have red curtains, and we have these kind of blocks that become different things, you know, so it becomes like a bed for the Queen, for the bedroom scene, the Polonius scene where he's murdered. It's a throne, it's the battlement walls. So yeah, they kind of move around, and the actors have to move them themselves. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah. I love that phrase. And for us, I am looking forward to getting a bit of money though, and being able to have a new set or just create a set for the next show. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And I should say also, it's Footspan, so this has been lent to us, and the costumes by Footspan. So, you know, we're very, very grateful to Footspan for allowing us to use their, because they have, having been around for 50 years, they have a lot of costumes and set and stuff. So, yeah.
You said that you chose particularly Hamlet for the actor that you thought would really play Hamlet. How is the composition of the company from Twelfth Night to Hamlet? Are the same actors? Are different actors? How did you choose?
Well, again, I mean, it's the same thing. So we lost 3 of the actors. So the original Footspan, when we came here, a lot of those actors, well, let me think. So 1, 2, 3, 4 of those actors are gone. So half of the company is gone. And we just replaced as we needed to. I mean, it's difficult, you know, we don't have funding, so we can't have people on a wage, you know, so people are finding work as and when they can, and for some people it wasn't possible. Some people one of our actors got a TV job somewhere, so he went and did that, and then we just replaced as we went. Nathan, who's playing Hamlet, he replaced somebody in Twelfth Night. We did it in London in November of 2024. And the actor who was playing Feste couldn't do it. And so we found Nathan. And luckily, Nathan stayed with us. So, yeah.
We talked a bit before about this democratization of Shakespeare and how this theater art, should be accessible to everybody. And I want to ask you, as a follow-up question, what should be the relationship in a theater performance, talking from the British tradition, between entertainment and a moral school? and a school of feeling. What's the level between them, between entertaining, which has its particular characteristics, and this truthfulness of human experience?
Wow, what a question. I don't know. I think, I don't want to come across preachy, because I think theatre is for everyone.
Yeah.
I think people should be allowed to access theatre and present theatre however they want, as long as it's not harming anybody.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, I need to have meaning and depth. I've never been. I like the entertainment business. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But in terms of work that I create, I want it to have meaning, both for people, both personally and also socially as well. I think theatre is part of the social fabric of the world, and I think it's very important that everybody has access to it. We do a lot of work. I come from a background of working with people with learning disabilities and teaching, directing, creating theatre with people. And so a big part of our work is that we've been giving, over the last year, a lot of workshops to young adults with learning disabilities. We want to create a kind of mentorship program to help people to access training on a professional level, to enter the theatre professionally. And in fact, the first workshop that we did for Hamlet, we did at a place called Ruskin Mill in the UK, which is they have colleges for young adults with learning disabilities from very, very deprived backgrounds, often. And we began Hamlet with them. So we did a 1-week workshop. And it was just fantastic for the actors. That was the way into Hamlet. So there was no room to be kind of, hey, I'm playing Hamlet and I'm cool, and or to come at it from an academic. You can't come at it from an academic place. It's all just heart, and it's real, and it's relevant. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does.
And I think I was telling you about this article in The Stage, where I was quoted as saying that we were doing celebrity-free Shakespeare. But I think in the UK, especially, because theatre isn't subsidised at really much, although I hear that I don't know if it's the RSC or the I think it's the RSC have just been given another few billion in their funding, but
the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Yeah, the Royal Shakespeare Company. I think there's a danger of a real division happening in theatre. There's been cuts in schools. We've had, you probably know, we had 20 years of quite right-wing politics. There was very little money going into social services, schools, the national health. And we're suffering as a country from that. So I think there's a real danger of Shakespeare being lost. Certainly professional quality productions that used to tour and used to be accessible and used to be affordable, it's just not there anymore. Even the Royal Shakespeare Company, when they tour, when they go to do so-called regional touring, people can't afford the tickets, So it's important for us you know, that's very much part of what we want to do, is we've got a little stage that we travel with, that we go to places. We're going down to Cornwall, which is right in the southern point of the UK. And we're trying to keep the ticket costs down, you know, to make it accessible to people, and give workshops, and, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very much part of why we're doing this, I think.
And the last question of this talk. The theme of our festival this year is Will Matters, as can be read on the background. Which comes from The Tempest.
Yeah.
What does Will Matters mean for you and for your work with Shakespeare?
I mean, when I hear that,
Yeah.
I think of going back to the beginning of our conversation, I think of it matters because, and the matters are the human condition. And that's what that's, I think, what Shakespeare was so brilliant at, was finding the truth of what it is to be alive, and to be human, and to live this life with all the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that we all have, regardless rich or poor. And that's what unites us as people. That's what unites us in theatre. That's what unites us in song. And these are the matters. This is what matters, I would say.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this talk.
Thank
I will
you.
change back to Romanian for the outro.
Great.
Vă mulțumim că sunteți alături de noi. De la ora 12:30, colega mea Irina Zlotea va vorbi cu Catinca Drăgănescu, directorul interimar al Teatrului Masca din București, și vă așteptăm să rămâneți cu noi la ora 12:30. Vă mulțumim!